Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hmong Woman Now. Again, it's Linda. Welcome again. Thanks for joining us. Today, I have a very special guest. We always do. Today, I have with us Vu. Vu is going to tell us a little bit about who she is, as always, and then we are going to jump into the interview. And then at the very end, you guys will be welcome to ask any questions that you do have. So, welcome, Vu, to Hmong Woman Now. Go ahead and tell everyone who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Go for it.
Okay. So I don't really know where to begin, but I guess just kind of from the beginning. So I was born in the Bambina refugee camp in Thailand in 1989. My family immigrated to the United States, I would say in 1991. We first moved to Sacramento, California. And then a few months after that, we migrated across the country to Morganton, North Carolina, where we finally settled. I'm the oldest child. Originally, I have four younger siblings, but in 2010, my family became a blended family. So when my father remarried, we added two more siblings to the family, and so I'm still the eldest, but now I'm the eldest of six. Currently, I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I moved here about last April when my husband and I got married.
Awesome. Okay, so some more information about Vu. We'll elaborate it a little bit. Vu did share with me that she's a graduate student with a MA in social work. She is also a professional photographer. She has her own brand of photography, and it is called Sunkissed Photography. So we're going to dive in a little bit into her career and learn a little bit about her education background and hopefully about her business. And hopefully, if you guys have any questions afterwards, and reach out to Vu if you do have any questions. Okay, so for now, we're going to ask her to tell us a little bit about what is it that sparked your interest to go into the field of social work.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I've always been a helper, a giver, and a guider, kind of been in that role, definitely being the oldest child. And I hit a pretty low point in life when my parents divorced in 2007. So that was right when I started my freshman year in college. I attended East Carolina University, which is a school that was about 4.5 hours away. So I was very lost, very insecure, and, even thought about quitting school at one point. But definitely my family kind of pushed me to continue my goals. And so, I stayed in school, but I think I was really angry at the world about all the things that was happening to my family. So, eventually my grades started to slip, and I was failing my biology and my chemistry classes, and I changed my major a few times, and was just really lost and unsure. And truthfully, how do you expect an 18-year-old to kind of know what they want to do for the rest of their life? Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I changed my major, and I enrolled in a class that was required for that major, and that class is called Cultural Diversity. So in that class, I read a book called The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman. And it's a book written about a girl named Leah Lee who was diagnosed with epilepsy at a very young age. And so it really talks about the clash of two cultures, really, is the Hmong culture and the westernized American medicine. And so the book really detailed some really raw miscommunications and details that I feel a lot of Hmong elders and Hmong families struggle to deal with today. So I was really intrigued and inspired by what I read in that book. And in that book, there's a social worker who, in my opinion, really helped provide a bridge for Leah and her family and for the doctors and the other medical providers. So that really inspired me. And I started to think about, what can I do to make a difference in this world? How can I use my experience in life, just the things I've gone through, the burden, the pain? How can I use those to really fuel me to help others? So that was kind of my aha moment when I realized that I wanted to be a social worker.
Okay, so then your undergraduate degree would be in social work? Is that correct?
Well, so by the time I realized that I wanted to do social work, I was already in my spring semester of my senior year, and I had already declared my major. So I was set to graduate in May of 2009. And I got my undergraduate degree in rehabilitation services.
Rehabilitation service. Okay.
Yeah.
So did that? I've never heard of that. So can you tell us a little bit about that degree? So what is rehabilitation services? What does it
Okay.
allow you to do?
So a lot of the focus is on working with people who are physically handicapped or disabled, and also working with individuals who have mental disabilities. So with a BS in rehabilitation services, you do a lot of more case management focused work, where you're probably doing a lot of questionnaire assessments, and then maybe directing them to someone else who can then kind of take on their cases and work with them to connect them to resources. So in a way, it was somewhat of a relationship with social work, but then you kind of stopped at one point and kind of handed it off to the social workers or to the nurses or, you know, whoever the person may be. And there's a lot of focus on voc rehab, which is helping the individual with the disability to train them for, you know, basically the workforce.
Okay. So then did your undergraduate degree prepare you for the graduate program for social work?
In a way it did, because some of the classes kind of crossed one another. I was really grateful for that cultural diversity class, of course, but I also took like a case management class when I was doing my rehab services degree, and that really allowed me the opportunity to kind of have that knowledge and that skill set while entering into my master's program.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about where you completed your graduate program?
Yeah, so I went to graduate school in Johnson City, and the school is East Tennessee State University, which was about a good, I would say an hour and 45 minutes from where I was living with my parents, or where my parents were living.
Okay. So then when you got into your graduate program for social work, what were some of the challenges that you had?
I guess some of the challenges was just a lot of it was staying motivated. I feel like that for me was number one. It's so easy to lose motivation, especially when like you feel like the world around you just seems to keep going and moving, and you just kind of feel like, you know, everyone's settling down, everyone's starting a family, starting their careers, and then you're still in school trying to make ends meet. So that in itself was a challenge. Another one is definitely being overwhelmed by the amount of work you have to do in graduate school.
Okay.
The research papers, the projects and presentations, internships, it's a lot to take in and a lot to do.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought up research paper and internship, because a lot of students who are interested in going to, you know, into their masters or their doctors, a lot of them are not aware of what the master's programs are like. So if you can share a little bit with us about what the program was mostly focused on. So half of the time was it focused on research, and then the other half on internship?
Well, so every class is structured very differently, but of course, and I can't speak on behalf of the other master's program, but I know that for the social work program, we had to do a lot of research papers. We had to do a lot of peer review articles and literature reviews. So there was a lot of that going on. The internships I did, each semester I did have to do one, but the hours were a little bit less during the first year. So that kind of gave us the opportunity to focus more on our research projects and our studies.
Okay. So what type of research programs, what type of internship do you guys do?
It really varies. So the first year is more focused on maybe case management, really wanting to get your feet wet with being the frontline staff, working with patients or working with clients or members, or, you know, whatever your field is. The term you use will be different, but it was really focused on getting your feet wet, introducing you to the different populations, and then allowing you to use some of the systems, the models, the theories that you've learned in class, and trying to slowly apply that to the population you're working with.
Okay. Hi, baby. That's nice to know. Okay. My question is, you mentioned a little bit about researching. Would you say that's one of the challenges for you, or it could be challenges for people that were in the same cohort as you? Did they struggle with the writing piece or research piece?
So, I mean, I would say definitely when I first started my graduate program, definitely was overwhelmed just looking at the syllabus and realizing, oh my gosh, I have 5 research papers for one class each, and I was taking like
Mhm.
4 or 5 classes. So that was a lot of research papers. The struggle came when, I had to do a lot of what they call, like, I think in high school and even in college, you're taught to do MPA writing style. And then
Uh-huh.
when we get
Okay.
to the master's program, they had us do APA style. So I'm like, I have
Yes.
no idea what it
Yes.
is. So a lot of it was
Uh-huh.
teaching myself the different writing styles, how to appropriately reference in my papers, word citation and all that. So that itself was the challenge for me. But once I started writing, once I started my research, and once I started getting into what I was writing about, it became a lot easier for me.
Okay. What would you say, what's some advice you would give people who are struggling with the writing or the
Mhm.
research? What are some advice you would give them to overcome that?
So yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to get to know your professors, especially when you are in a master's program. The class size is so much smaller. And
Mm-hmm.
that really in itself allows your professors to focus a lot more time with you. And
Mm-hmm.
they are more than willing to help you, because the point is, this is an investment that you're putting into your life. And so they want to help you succeed. But you have to ask them for
Mm-hmm.
help. They're not going to approach you. So
Yeah.
that's one way to get
Mm-hmm.
over that fear of writing, or not knowing how to start. The other one is, every school has a like a writing center, whether that's in the
Mm-hmm.
library or a student center. Don't be afraid to utilize it, because the resources are there. You just have to go to it. They're not going to come to you.
You're right. I love that. You are right.
Mhm.
My other question for you is, what is the most essential skill you feel that is important for any student when they are trying to complete, their master's program?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely feel like um, having the motivation,
Mm-hmm.
determination, really, like, and I say this to my family members and my husband all the time, is you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
be the smartest, the brightest crayon in the box, but
Yeah.
as long as you have the motivation, the drive, the dedication, and the perseverance,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be okay.
You're right.
So
You're right. I
that
love
I
that.
feel like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
You're right. I agree with you. That's something that I tell my own sisters or my
Mhm.
sister-in-laws. I have sister-in-laws who are interested. Actually, I have a sister-in-law who's interested in going to her master's in social work. So I often hear her say that, she's not smart, but I say the same thing. You don't need to be
Mhm.
smart. It's the determination. That's what gets you through it.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I am also going to ask you, what is the difference between someone who has their undergraduate degree and a graduate degree in social work?
Okay, so um, an undergraduate degree is referred to as BSW, which is
Mm-hmm.
Bachelor's of Science in Social Work, and then a graduate degree is MSW, which is Master's of Science in Social Work. So
Mm-hmm.
the difference is kind of in the practice itself. So, like, someone with a BSW may um, find that they do more case management work, whether that's through the Department of Children's Services or hospitals or nursing homes. And to be honest, you eventually hit a glass ceiling because the degree won't allow you to advance. A lot of
Okay.
the professions now require a master's degree for social work
Mm-hmm.
to be able to take on higher roles. So again, it's the difference is mostly in the practice, and also in terms of your actual scope of practice with the degree.
Mm-hmm. And how many years did it take for you to finish your graduate program?
hmm So it took me 2 years. I ended
Okay.
up, because I didn't graduate my undergraduate as a BSW, I
Mm-hmm.
had to apply for the traditional program, the traditional track, which is basically a 2-year degree. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I had graduated with my bachelor's in social work, I could have gone and got my master's in a year, because so the first year in your MSW, they do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of review. And so that is stuff that you would have learned your last year as a BSW student. But because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that, the first year of your MSW is a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
review.
Okay. So can you give us an example of some things that you would do? Because I know you mentioned that your BSW allows you to do like case managing. So what is an example of what you could do with your MSW?
So I mean, with the MSW, like, the opportunities are just it's just endless. Like, you can work
Mm-hmm.
um, as a social worker in the school, as part of the counseling program at school. with kids and families. You can work in nursing homes with the elder gerontology population. You can work in medical clinics, hospitals, insurance companies. Like myself right now, I work for an insurance company, United Healthcare. But really, in my opinion, is you get to the meat of social work when you have your clinical license, which you may have heard people refer to as LCSW, which is kind of an advance from MSW. So a license in clinical social work will allow you to do a lot of clinical work, which is applying theories, applying perspectives and systems into the work population, the force that you work with. So after I got my MSW, I started the process to get my clinical license. And so I worked at a state psychiatric hospital in North Carolina for about, I want to say 2-3 years. And with my provisional clinical license, it allows me to earn my hours there, do clinical practice with my patients, and then also gave me opportunities for roles and job duties that some of the social workers who were either grandfathered in from a BSW degree or just had their MSW, like they couldn't do certain tasks, certain kind of work. So I was able to do that.
So then to get their license in clinical and social working, they would have to go for another year in school?
No. So every state has different guidelines. So after I finished graduate school in Tennessee, I moved back to home to my parents' home in North Carolina. And so their process was a little different. So I was able to apply for my provisional license, which means I could practice clinical social work, but under the direct supervision of someone else who has been in clinical practice for a minimum of, I want to say 2 years, but it could be 5. And again, it's different in every state. And so I was able to practice under their supervision. So I believe I had to earn like 1,000 hours of clinical work and then like 100 hours of supervision. And I had to get like my continued education, like CEUs, taking classes, ethic classes to make sure that I stay on top of the education and that I was on top of like the most recent research and whatnot. So for me, it's on average, it takes 2 to 2.5 years. For me, it took 2 years to get my LCSW, and I became licensed last February.
Okay, all right. Would you say that it could become a financial issue for people if they want to continue that for that many years?
So, I mean, with going to graduate school, I mean, we know up front that that's going to be an investment because unfortunately, the grants aren't available for someone who wants to pursue the master's. So you're going to end up with, private loans or standard, subsidized and unsubsidized loan, unless you get like grants, or not grants, but like scholarships or a student aid. So what I did, I actually feel like I got really lucky when I applied for Tennessee. I didn't have to pay out of state because I got into a program where if I worked for my department, I only had to pay in-state tuition. So I did that throughout my my master's degree as I worked for the school, the department basically. And so instead of paying the full out of state, I paid in state. So, I mean, there are different ways to fund your education. You just have to really look for them. And then as far as getting your LCSW, you're going to have to invest a little bit more money into it because you have to pay to take the test. You may have to pay to take your CEUs. And then there are some supervisors who charge you, unfortunately, to supervise you for your clinical license. But for me, I was very fortunate that where I worked, my supervisor was already licensed. So she just, supervised me.
So would you say there are some help available that students can find available online by researching on their own, or do you say that, or would you say that there are resources available on campus in which students just need to search for that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say do both. So I learned about this program online. When I read about it, I was really intrigued, but they didn't give a lot of details. So what I actually did was when I went to tour the school and I met with the department head, I asked her about it, and she was the one who gave me more information and gave me the application, so I applied.
Okay, great. So let's move on into a little bit into your experience in the field. So how long have you worked in the field as a social worker?
So I graduated with my MSW in 2011, and then I went straight into the workforce 6 months later. So I've been in practice 6 years, and I have been professional for 2 years, of course, and then 2016 I got officially licensed. So yeah, 6 years in practice.
Okay. I know you mentioned that having your MSW, you have multiple opportunities. Is there a specific part in which you're focused on?
So right now I'm a care coordinator with United Healthcare. So my role is, reaching out to members in our plan telephonically, completing health assessments with them, identifying barriers to them getting health care, and then referring them to the appropriate avenue for assistance. So, I guess you can say right now my population is the SSI Medicaid population, but before that I had a lot of focus on like the mentally ill.
Okay, all right. So, what are some challenges that you would say? What would you say? Kind of speak right now. What are some challenges that you've had in the field?
So I definitely think there's so many different challenges. But one that I can think of is that a lot of people expect you to solve all of their problems. You may hear a lot of social workers joke about having a magic wand. Some people have this belief that, if they can't solve it, then the social worker can, or if they don't want to do it, then the social worker will do it. And unfortunately, there are some social workers who feel like they have to do everything, and so they will enable their patients, enable their team. And so when you step in to join the team or to fill the role of the social worker who left, unfortunately, the same expectations are passed down to you. Another challenge is like not everyone understands the value of the work that we do as social workers yet, because we're still a very, I wouldn't say a young profession, but a growing profession. So there are places where social workers are paid really under the competitive rate, and you really have to advocate for yourself and research your company and their values before joining the workforce.
Okay. I kind of just thought about this from the top of my mind. Would you say that people have a misconception that social work is very similar to counseling?
So they do, social workers can do counseling, and I think that's where it gets confusing is counselors or LPCs is what they refer to. Their focus is counseling itself in a nutshell. With social workers, if you have your LCSW, you can do counseling as well, but you do so much more than just that. You're able to bill for certain activities that maybe an LPC cannot. You're able to work in an environment that maybe an LPC cannot, because within their license, they're not able to practice that. So, they are very similar, but still the duties of a social worker is just so much vast than just that of the LPC. Not to put counselors down, because we definitely need them too, but the work and sometimes even the model and approaches are slightly different.
Okay. I don't have any other questions about social work. So I think I'm going to shift our talk into your photography background. I feel that if anybody has further questions about your social work background, we will go ahead and come back to that. But for now, I'm going to kind of switch it around. We're going to talk a little bit about your photography. So I've seen the photos you've taken. I've seen the work you've done, and they are amazing. Okay, so again, you have your own brand of photography, which is Sunkissed Photography. Would you please share with us what has made it possible for you to find that balance? I know you said you work at home, but I'm pretty sure it gets overwhelming at times. But what has made it possible for you to balance between your work as a social worker and as a professional photographer?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I really did photography as just a hobby, something that was stress reliever, my go-to, and I wanted to shut out the world. So I never felt like I had to balance it with my day job. But this year, I'm really working on building my brand and putting my work out there. So now I do have to start balancing both my professions. But really lucky for me, I have the luxury of working from home with United Healthcare as a care coordinator. So like in breaks or on my lunches or, whatever free moment I have, I can work on marketing, responding to emails or, whatever, plan my next project. And then really the evenings, is where all the magic happens as a photographer.
Yeah.
And that's when I meet with my clients to teach them about my service, my brand, my products. I design their sessions. I do the shootings, of course, the editing, and then, of course, the reveal and ordering session. All of that happens usually in the evenings. I try not to do too much weekends because I definitely want time to spend with my family and for my. But I mean, sometimes you kind of have to be flexible, especially when you're new in business.
Do you ever find yourself like extremely overwhelmed? Because you have a lot. I'm sure you have a lot of clients, and you have a lot of photos that you have to get done in a certain time, and then you still have your work as a care coordinator. So do you ever find yourself extremely overwhelmed?
Not yet.
Oh, that's good to know.
I've only been taking a few clients to kind of start off with. I'm not that busy, and we're running into a very slow season with photography because it's starting to get cold. So,
Okay.
I haven't had that issue, but I when I was doing a lot of like free shoots or a lot of trade shoots with models and other vendors, it got a little overwhelming because I was doing so much of I guess freelance work for exposure. And that was overwhelming for me because I wasn't getting much in return, but I wanted to build my portfolio. So yeah, at that point I was overwhelmed. But since I changed my my business model, I haven't felt that way. So.
Okay. So the next question I'm going to ask you is going to be a little bit about misconceptions. So we know that people, probably in our community, maybe the older people, but people haven't really accepted, art as a form of career, and so people often find it to be insignificant. What would you say about that?
Um, that's a really tough one because I think a career that does not bring in sufficient income, immediately it's kind of deemed as unworthy. And an art career is very risky, to say the least. But it's a valuable profession. We need artists in the world. I mean, can you imagine a world without photographers, without painters, without musicians, without digital artists? Like it would just be a bland world. And so, we definitely should not devalue artists. We need them to add diversity into the world.
So what advice would you give to our youth? Because I know that, photography is starting to become, well known in our community. It's starting to expand. And so I know there are some youth who are experiencing with that already. What advice would you give them, those who are interested in photography, but are a little bit hesitant because, of the view that people still have on photography or art in general?
Right. So, and I think some artists may hate me for this, but, I don't want to sugarcoat anything. So I would say work smarter, not harder. Like, we all know one or two struggling artists. If you really want to be a photographer, if you really want to go to school for photography, I would say, do it as a minor. Why not do marketing or business as a major? Because you need those skills to succeed as a photographer if you plan to open up your own business. And that's really what I'm trying to teach myself is how to be a business person, how to market to the right clients. Same thing applies to, any other artist industry, whether it's videography, music, or painting. Like the bottom line is, you don't stop chasing your dream, but you have to be smart and you have to have a backup plan. No artist degree is going to get you successful overnight. Like you're not going to pick up your camera, take a couple of really good photos, go on Facebook, post it, and then all of a sudden become like the most, the photographer of the year. That doesn't happen that way, unfortunately. So, as a side note, photography gear is expensive. So to start off with, you're going to need some income. And unless you get lucky or unless you are born to a family who has some money, you have to provide it for yourself to build your passion.
Okay. So with that being said, how many years did it take for you to become a professional photographer?
So I would say from the moment I picked up my first camera, DSLR camera in 2009, to now and counting, because you really have to learn your equipment in order to build your skills. So I would say 2009.
Okay. All right. Let's see. What were some challenges in building your own brand?
Oh my gosh. So there are many challenges, of course. I think to this day, I am still building my brand. because when I think of the word brand, I think of like trust. I think of quality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's word association. I want my brand, like when my clients hear my brand, I want them to think of trust. I want them to know, like, if they come to me, they can trust that I will deliver excellent, high quality services and products. So, I want my brand to be the heirloom worthy and, of course, worth their investment. But of course, to be that kind of brand, it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm still working on branding.
So as you're working towards it, at any point did you feel kind of like just giving up, or this is not going to happen?
I definitely have my moments. Like every night, I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this to my husband, but I mean, he really does push me. He really is my cheerleader. Having a very strong support system definitely helped me to keep going. But yes, I do have my moments of weakness, and everybody does. Like no matter how long we've been in this certain profession, like we all have our doubts, because we are really our worst critics, we're our worst enemy. We can present something and someone thinks it's so amazing, and I would look at one photo at first, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and I keep looking at it, I stare at it, I'm like, oh my god, this is horrible, but someone else with fresh eyes come in and look, and it's like, oh no, this is really amazing. So you need that support, encouragement. You need someone to kind of feed your ego a little sometimes.
Right. What skills would you say would be some of the most important skills to have in becoming a professional photographer?
So, I mean, first and foremost is definitely knowing your equipment. You can have like the newest gadgets, the newest gears, but if you don't know how to work them, your products will be mediocre. Basically, the final results of your images will be mediocre. Secondly is having an eye for detail, and that includes like colors, framing, lighting is so important. Even posing, a lot of things come into that. And then thirdly is, build your portfolio slowly. And of course, last but not least, and this is very arguable, but to become a official or professional photographer, you have to file for your business license, and then you have to file to pay taxes. And some people may say, well, her work's not even that good, she's not really a professional. Well, technically by law, if that's part of their income, if they're paying taxes and they've registered a business, then yes, they are a professional. So, I mean, in a nutshell, those are some of the essentials to becoming a professional. But again, there's a lot of very arguable points.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've always wondered to myself, because like I said a while back, that photography in our community right now is expanding. So I've always wondered, how does that work? Like when you have that own business, your own photography business, like is it not a part of the system? Is it something you just do on the side and then you just get that money? So I'm glad you brought that up. So we do, those of us who are pursuing that, we do have to eventually, what did you say, get licensed for it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to apply for a business license, and you definitely have to, like any income, like anything you make, you have to file for taxes. Even if it's $50, if it's $100, you still have to file your taxes at the end of the year and count that as income. So, I know when photographers begin, I know certain states have like the rules of what you can consider a hobby versus what you consider an actual profession. So really, I recommend just reading into what does your state define as hobby, and what does your state define as professional.
Okay. Also, right now, we know that photography is expanding. It's becoming very, very competitive. I see a lot of brand out there. And so for those who are just entering into the field, what advice would you give them? What is something that would help them to stand out among all these other amazing photographers?
Yeah. So, and I pondered about this question when you said to me for a while, is, I want to be brutally honest. But I want to put it in a way that does not offend any photographers, whether they're new photographers or whether they're seasoned. So, and yes, like you said, photography has become a very, very saturated field. Like anyone can go to Best Buy, buy an expensive camera, and the next thing you know, they're offering to shoot like their cousin's wedding or engagement photos. Or like your friend with the expensive camera is not going to be taking your senior photos versus you actually investing in a professional photographer. So, I mean, there's really nothing wrong with that, to be honest, because we all start off somewhere. But photographers are really devalued when an inexperienced friend or family is, quote unquote, hired over a professional to document like important milestones and moments in someone's life. So my advice for any uprising artist is, don't be afraid to be a second shooter for a while. Like, so if, your friend, your cousin asks you to do a senior session or photograph their
Mm-hmm.
wedding, maybe such as, like, oh, I'd love to, but, have you considered hiring a professional? Like I could be the second shooter, and that way you're
Okay.
guaranteed great quality if I mess up, but I still get to add to my portfolio. So like, that's an
Mm-hmm.
approach, something to think about, especially when you're entering into such a competitive field.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
and I was just also gonna talk about like how to stand out.
Okay.
So like I think really is branding is so huge in marketing. So like you have to really determine what is my style.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I marketing in? Is it seniors? Is it weddings, families? And aside from taking someone's photo, is what other services are you going to be offering them? Are you going to be offering them products? What unique experience can you give them so that they want to tell other people about you? And so
Mm-hmm.
once you've mapped that out, once you've gained the experience, then you can take off the training wheel and then you can start charging some real money. And so
Okay.
now, and my advice for all artists when it comes to charging is, and this is most regards to photographers, of course, but we as photographers are really only hurting ourselves when we're charging like, $50 to $200.
Mm-hmm.
And clients are receiving like 20 to 25 images all edited on a CD or a flash drive. And so
Mm-hmm.
why do I say this? So, okay, so I actually took time to do the math. So, okay, let's say, I charge $150 for a 1 hour session. Okay. And then my
Mm-hmm.
client's going to get 20 retouched images. Okay. That's reasonable. So I'm going to break it down for you. So like time spent emailing or engaging with a client for a photographer who is using a non in-person sales model, they may spend maybe, I don't know, say 15, 30 minutes with the
Mm-hmm.
client. Then drive time to and from a session would be like an additional 30 minutes. Then the session itself is an hour. Culling and editing, like maybe 300 shots that you just took, and then you select the best
Mm-hmm.
20 and you edit those, may take 6.5 hours, even more. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everyone does it differently.
Yeah.
But that's only if you take like 20 minutes to edit 20 photos of the 20 selected. So
Mm-hmm.
then you burn the CD onto a flash drive, another 15 minutes. You deliver the images to the client, another 15 minutes. And
Mm-hmm.
so for this one session, if I did my math right, you've
Yeah.
invested 9 hours into one session.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's roughly $16.67 an hour. So
Mm-hmm.
and that's only if you're not providing like prints, tangible products. So technically you didn't get paid $150 for an hour session. You got paid $150 for 9 hours of work. So
Okay.
if you run a legit business, there are expenses. You have to keep the business running somehow. And so the money you make goes into running your business.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is, I really want to challenge all the photographers to, whether you're entering or your season, think about, what you're charging for your time. Like, your expertise, your art, your experience. And by undercharging your worth, you really devalue yourself and you really devalue other photographers in your area. And just
Mm-hmm.
by giving clients like a flash drive or a CD, a lot of times they don't do anything with it. It stays, under the drawer in the desk or whatever. Like
I'm
I've had
guilty.
clients who,
I'm
I've had
guilty of
clients.
that.
Yes, and at one point before I educated myself in this, was guilty of that too. But like, and I think about this all the time is when I pass away, like, what heirloom product am I going to be leaving behind for my children? And am I
Mhm.
going to be leaving like a flash drive, my Facebook with my password so they have the
Yeah.
photos? Or
Yeah.
do I want to leave them like products like beautiful albums, canvases of
Mm-hmm.
me and my family so that they have that
Mm-hmm.
to keep generations to come? So that's just my 2 cents, just for, photographers and artists to think about, really not to put anyone down.
Mm-hmm. I kind of just thought about this with you mentioning all about the hours and all the time you put into it. I kind of thought about, instead of like those, like those sessions with a client, sometimes I see photographers, they actually work with like models, makeup artists, and all of that. Is that something that you kind of just network and just kind of, hey, let's do this together? Or is that something that photographers actually have to invest in order to do
I
that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it never hurts to collaborate with like your local vendors or local artists. So
Mm-hmm.
and just recently this week, I actually did a collaboration project with a local makeup artist, a local dress designer, and a local model, and a local venue, and a local florist. So we were
Mm-hmm.
a team of like 5 people coming together. to put like one vision together. And really is not only does it add to your portfolio, you are able to network with others who share the same passion with you. And working with a local venue is huge because that in itself is a way to market. You know, now that they have seen your work, now that they know how you are on set, they may recommend you to a client who goes to their venue to book a wedding, who's looking for an engagement photographer, or who's looking for a wedding dressmaker, or, you know, whatever, florist, a designer, a makeup artist. Now you got someone who could potentially refer you. So I wouldn't say that you have to do it, but I would say that it's a good way to network with others in your area and to really get your work out there.
Would you say that it's also going to cost money for them to do that? Because I know we kind of talk about how you know, photography is really expensive for someone who's barely starting. Which you know how you said that, do that to network. So for someone who's really just starting, they want to be able to expand that network, right? But would it, if they don't have any, you know, finance for that, would that be something that's not possible for them?
So I mean, I would say like when I do these collaborations, I haven't lost any monetary value or any money to say. I mean, if you count gas, yes. But this is all the vendors bring and what resources they already have to create this look, to create this vision, to bring it to life. So, you know, maybe if you're a makeup artist and you need to get a new product, a new makeup, a new, you know, highlighter, whatever, you may lose some money. But as for me as a photographer, I do have the gear that I'll be using. So I utilize what I have. And I like to joke with my husband, I'm a very poor photographer because I have very limited equipment. But I try to do the best with the equipment I have. And I think it's very challenging in itself because if you don't have everything, you have to work a little bit harder, a little extra to get it to work. But I mean, it works. So yeah, I mean, starting out, you may not have, you know, 4 or 5 lenses, but you have that one that's really good. So use that one that's really good and, you know, make magic out of it. You have to be creative.
Okay. All right. So what would be some resources, some strategies, or just ideas that you would give that has been extremely helpful for you to other individuals who are aspiring to become photographers, or, you know, to go into social work? What is the main thing you would tell them?
I would say for social work. So I'm gonna start social work. You know, you're gonna reach moments where you feel like you're just gonna burn out. You're gonna reach moments where you feel like you can't do it anymore, especially when you're in the graduate program. You're gonna feel like, you know, you have no more motivation. But you really have to think like, how far have I come, and why am I here today? What inspired me to begin with? Like, how did it get started? And you're like, you have to really remind yourself of why and how you are where you are. And even asking yourself is like, how bad do you want this? Like, how afraid are you of not succeeding? And really using that fear and turning it around to be your fuel for motivation to keep striving. Like, really, I fed on my fear of failure, my fear of letting my family down, being the oldest, my fear of not being a good role model to them. I use that to really fuel me. And then I also, you know, used my parents' lack of education, their struggles, their sacrifices. You know, I thought about them like, if they were me right now, if they had my opportunity, what would they do? Like, would my father give up? No. I mean, I truly believe that if my parents were brought to the United States, you know, many years earlier, they could have made so much more of their life. So like, I really use a lot of that to fuel me in my darkest moments where I just like, you know, I just can't go on anymore. That's what I use. So that would be my advice for, and not just social work, not just a master's program, but school in general, is use those fears, use your burden, use your, you know, whatever you have, use that to fuel you for motivation to continue. And then as for photography, you know, if you're self-taught like me, YouTube, Google, those are like the best resources. And even connecting with other photographers on social media, like, don't be afraid to reach out to them. Like, the worst that could happen is they ignore you, and yes, no, that's okay. You're making the effort. But and more likely than not, they know where you are right now because they were there. So I'm pretty sure most of the photographers that you encounter will be more than happy to if not tell you themselves, direct you to where you can learn about it.
Okay, that's nice to know. Thank you for sharing that. Right now, we don't have anybody in particular that has questions, but we hope that, later when they have any questions, they can ask anyways. So before we do close this, I'd like to always ask everyone, my guests, a very important question. And my question is always talking about Hmong women. So this last question that I want to ask you is for you to describe for us what it means for you to be a Hmong woman, and what advice would you give other Hmong women and youth in our community?
Okay, so for me, what it means to be a Hmong woman is basically just to be a genuine and humble, human being, to help others in need, to offer advice for those who come looking, and really to guide those who are stumbling or who may seem lost, because I was there myself at one point, and sometimes I still feel like I am. And really to allow room for myself to grow as a Hmong woman, room to make mistakes, and then also to know that, it's okay to put myself first, to take care of myself first. Because really, if you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of anyone else? So in today's society, being a minority and being a woman in itself can be quite a disadvantage. I want to say to all my Hmong women, and I know this sounds really cheesy, but rise above it all. Really rise above the stereotypes, the expectations, the gender roles. Just rise above it all. We're more than just baby makers or housewives. We carry so much roles outside and inside of our homes. We're already superheroes in our own ways. And honestly, we can't control how people look at us, how they view us, how they judge us, or treat us. But one thing we can control is how do we respond to that. And I always say, respond with diplomacy, respond with respect, and show them that you are more than just what they think you are.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so empowering and so humble. So I love that. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome.
If we should have anyone who would like to reach out to you after this about photography or about social work at all, how can they reach out to you?
So you can always private message me on Facebook, or my email. I can definitely give it out. It's vue89@live.com. I'm more than happy to be a resource to anyone who reaches out to me. And if I don't know the answers, I will try to help provide you or direct you to someone or somewhere where there may be an answer. But yeah, I'm always more than happy to help everyone. And like I always say to my siblings is, people don't know that you need help unless you reach out. So yeah, definitely reach out. Don't be afraid. And like I said, the worst that can happen is they don't know how to help you. And then, you just kind of move on from there. But if you don't seek it, no one's going to give it to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Vu, for coming here. We've been in it for almost an hour now, so that's amazing. And I want to thank you for everything you've shared with us. It's been so informative, so educational, so again, very empowering. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being here with us again. Is there anything else that you would like to say to everyone before we just close the interview?
No, I want to actually thank you for starting this. I think this is so amazing that you've actually carved out time from your busy schedule to, really give Hmong women a spotlight, even if it's just for, an hour, 30 minutes. But really this is so great because there are so many wonderful Hmong women, and men too, but this is focused on Hmong women, but so many amazing Hmong women that have so much to contribute to society, so much education to share. And, this is a great platform for everybody to kind of start thinking about what can we do to help our community advance forward, and what kind of knowledge can we share to those who are seeking but don't know where to turn. So this is so great. So Linda, thank you so much for creating this.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here with us. You guys, don't forget that if you do have any further questions, you are welcome to reach out to me, and you are welcome to reach out to Vu. I'm sure she's more than happy to help you. And like you said, the worst thing that can happen is if she ignores you. Okay, so I think that, again, if you have any questions, reach out to her. So for joining us. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Vu. Hopefully we'll stay in touch. You have a beautiful evening. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thank you.